I always thought I was doing everything right. Working hard, saving money, being responsible. That's what adults are supposed to do, right? At least that's what I kept telling myself for the last 11 years while working 72-hour weeks at my accounting job. My name is Nicole Ritchie. I'm 32 years old, single, and as of 3 weeks ago, I finally bought my own home. When my grandmother passed away, she left me a small inheritance. It wasn't a lot, but it helped me afford a home I had been saving up for since I was 24. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, brought lunch from home every day, and skipped vacations that my friends happily went on. While others were posting pictures from trips to Maldives or buying expensive clothes, I was working late and saving every extra dollar I could. Eventually, I saved up $500,000. That was enough to buy my dream apartment with no mortgage, just paid in full. It's a 3-bedroom place, about 15 minutes from work, in a neighborhood that's getting nicer. The people who lived there before had awful wallpaper, and the kitchen needs work, but I don't mind. I decided to fix it up myself. To save money. Now I spend my evenings watching YouTube videos to learn how to do it. One night, I was scraping off some really ugly floral wallpaper when my phone rang. It was my mom. "Nicole, dear, I need you to come over next Thursday for a family meeting," she said, using that fake casual voice she always uses when something's up. "Family meeting? What's going on?" I asked, putting down my scraper. "Oh, it's a surprise. Just be here by 5. And bring one of those chocolate cakes from the bakery near your new place." "Mom, seriously, what is this about?" I immediately felt suspicious. "It's just a little family get-together," my mom said. "Your sister will be there with Brian, and I've invited your aunts, uncles, and cousins too." That made me raise an eyebrow. The whole extended family for a small get-together? "Mom, what's going on?" "It's a surprise, Nicole. Just be here, okay?" Then she hung up. I shrugged and went back to scraping wallpaper. Whatever my mom was planning could wait. I had a home to fix. My sister Janet is 2 years younger than me. She's 28 and has been dating Brian for about 5 years. They live in a rented apartment downtown. Janet has always had things a bit easier than I did. In high school, she was a cheerleader, while I was on the debate team. She dropped out of college to find herself, while I stuck with my accounting degree. Somehow, our parents never seemed to mind her choices. Growing up, it always felt like it was Janet this and Janet that. I still remember when we both had dance recitals the same weekend. Guess which one our parents went to? When Janet finished high school, they threw her a big party. When I graduated from college, we went to Olive Garden for dinner. I'll never forget my 17th birthday. I got a used bike. The next year, Janet turned 17 and got a car. When I asked my parents why, they said, "Janet needs help getting around for her social events." As if my debate meets and library volunteering didn't matter, but I've never been the type to complain. Instead, I worked harder, saved more, and showed I could take care of myself. The week went by quickly as I kept working on my apartment. I got all the wallpaper down and started painting the walls. Seeing how much I had done made me feel proud, even with sore hands and a few blisters. When Thursday came, I woke up early to finish painting the living room before going to my parents' house. I stopped by the bakery, like Mom asked, and picked up a chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, her favorite. Then I started the drive to the house I grew up in. I wondered what this family meeting could possibly be about. My parents live in a 1-story house that used to belong to my grandmother. When she passed away, she left it to my sister and me. We let our parents stay there, of course. It never even crossed my mind to do anything else. That house holds so many childhood memories, both happy and sad. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw several cars already parked. I recognized my Uncle Dylan's truck, Aunt Diane's minivan, and my cousin Roger's motorcycle leaning against the garage. Whatever this was about, it looked like the whole family had been invited. I took a deep breath, grabbed the cake box, and walked inside. "Nicole's here," my mom called out as I came through the door. She gave me a quick hug and took the cake from me. Perfect timing. We're just about to sit down. I looked around the living room. Janet and Brian were on the couch, holding hands and whispering to each other. My dad was talking with Uncle Dylan in the corner. Aunt Diane and my cousins were already heading to the dining room. "What's going on?" I asked Janet as I walked over. She smiled in a way that told me she knew something. "You'll see." That didn't make me feel any better. In fact, it made me even more nervous. I followed everyone into the dining room. Mom had set the table with her fancy china, the kind she only uses on holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Whatever this was about, it was clearly important. I sat down next to Cousin Roger, who looked just as puzzled as I was. "Do you know what this is about?" I whispered. He shook his head. "No idea. Your mom just said there was big news. Food was passed around. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. The chocolate cake I brought was placed in the middle of the table for dessert. Everyone made small talk, but no one mentioned why we were really there. It felt like everyone was avoiding the big question. Finally, after everyone had filled their plates, my mom stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to thank you all for coming today," she said with a big smile. "We have some wonderful news to share with you." Mom stood at the head of the table, smiling so wide it looked almost fake. She looked at Janet and said, "Our sweet Janet is pregnant." The room burst into cheers and congratulations. Janet blushed, and Brian put his arm around her shoulders. "And they're getting engaged," Mom added. "They'll be planning the wedding soon." I clapped with everyone else. Even though things between Janet and me were sometimes difficult, I was truly happy for her. "Congratulations, Janet," I said with a smile. But Mom wasn't finished. She looked at Dad and Janet, then turned to me with a strange look that made my stomach sink. "That's not all," she said, cutting through the noise. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to Mom, waiting to hear more, including me. "As you all know, Nicole recently bought her own apartment," Mom said, nodding toward me. Some of the relatives mumbled, "Congratulations," even though they hadn't said anything. When I told them 3 weeks ago, "Nicole is 32 years old and single," Mom went on. "No husband, no kids, not even a boyfriend." I felt my face get hot. Why was she bringing that up? Janet, on the other hand, Mom continued, is starting a family. She and Brian need a real home, not just a rented apartment. My heart started to race. I had a bad feeling about where this was going. I looked at Janet and Brian. They were staring down at their plates. Then Mom turned to me, still smiling, but it didn't feel kind anymore. "Nicole, this is your chance to show how much you love your sister. To show how generous and caring you are. I think you should give your new apartment to Janet and Brian." The room went silent. I stared at my mom, waiting for her to say she was joking. But she didn't. "You can go back to renting," she said like it was no big deal. "You don't need all that space just for yourself." I looked around the table. My dad nodded, agreeing with her. Janet finally looked at me, her face a mix of guilt and hope. "That's a wonderful idea," Aunt Diane said. "Family should always come first." Others nodded in agreement. That's when I realized this wasn't some random idea. They had planned this. "You can't be serious," I finally said. "Of course I'm serious," Mom said, her voice firm. "Your sister needs it more than you do." I stood up slowly, my chair making a loud sound as it slid across the floor. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You want me to give Janet my apartment? The apartment I worked 72-hour weeks for? The one I saved for over 7 years to buy? The one I just paid for with my savings and Grandma's inheritance? You want me to just hand it over because Janet is pregnant?" "Nicole," Dad said, his voice warning me to calm down. "Don't be selfish." Selfish? I let out a laugh, though it didn't sound right, even to me. I worked for that apartment, every single dollar. No one helped me. "But Janet needs—" Mom started. "No," I cut her off. "Absolutely not. I will not give Janet my apartment. It's mine. I earned it." Janet suddenly started crying, putting her hand on her still flat stomach in a dramatic way. Brian gave me a nasty look, like I had just done something terrible. "How can you be so cold?" Mom shouted, her face red with anger. "She's your sister!" "And how can you ask me to give away everything I've worked for?" I said. "Why doesn't Janet work and save like I did?" People around the table began whispering. I heard things like, "so selfish," and "she's always been the difficult one." "You've always been like this," Mom snapped, "always thinking only about yourself." "I'm not giving her my apartment," I said firmly. "That's final." What happened next felt like a slow-motion scene in a movie. Mom grabbed The chocolate cake I brought, the one still untouched in the middle of the table, and threw it at me. It hit me right in the face. Frosting and cake splattered all over my cheeks, neck, and blouse. The room went silent. I slowly wiped the frosting from my eyes, letting chunks of cake fall to the floor. No one rushed to help. Dad and Janet didn't look surprised or upset. In fact, they looked almost satisfied, like I had finally been put in my place. I didn't say a word. I picked up my purse and car keys and walked out, cake still all over my clothes and hair. Behind me, the yelling started. Selfish. Girl, Mom shouted. We should disown you, Dad called out. How could you do this to me? Janet cried. I got in my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. But somehow, I managed to drive home, the frosting drying on my skin. Collapsed on my old secondhand couch, the one I brought from my last rental, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. My phone started buzzing almost right away. Texts and calls from my parents and Janet came flooding in. You're being ridiculous. Just give her the apartment. I can't believe how selfish you're being, one of the messages said. After everything we've done for you, your pregnant sister needs a home. I turned off my phone and threw it aside. What had they ever really done for me? All my life, I had come second to Janet. When we were kids and both needed new school clothes, Janet got brand name stuff while I got whatever was on sale. When we both wanted to go to summer camps, my parents found the money for Janet's art camp, but told me debate camp was too expensive. For Janet's 17th birthday, they threw a big party with a DJ. On mine, Mom baked a cake and invited 2 relatives, and now they wanted me to just give her my apartment, the one thing I earned, completely on my own. I thought about the house we were all sitting in just an hour earlier. My grandmother's house, the one she left to Janet and me equally in her will. We had let our parents stay there because we were being kind. We never asked them for rent or anything in return. I owned half of that house, just like Janet did, and suddenly I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder labeled Grandma's Will. Inside was the paper that proved it. Janet and I each owned 55% of our parents' home. They were living there because we let them, not because they had the legal right to. I was about to call a lawyer when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Snapchat. My mom had tagged me in a post. My stomach sank as I opened the app, and nearly dropped my phone when I saw what she wrote. It breaks my heart to share this, but sometimes family lets you down in the worst way. Yesterday, my daughter Nicole refused to help her pregnant sister Janet in her time of need. Even though she had the means to help, she chose selfishness over love. As a mother, I've never been more heartbroken. Please pray for Nicole to find kindness in her heart. There were already dozens of comments, most from family and friends. I was there. Nicole was horribly mean to poor Janet. Some people just don't understand what family means. Keeping a whole apartment for herself when her sister is pregnant? Shameful. Not one person mentioned the cake Mom threw in my face. Not one asked why I should give away the home I had worked years to buy. I kept scrolling. Each comment felt like a stab to the chest. And worst of all, I saw my mom liking and replying to the cruelest ones, cheering them on. She wasn't just upset. She was trying to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. And in that moment, something inside me changed. The last bit of family loyalty I had left, it snapped. I picked up my phone and searched for a real estate lawyer near me. I called the first one that showed up. Ellis Law Office. A receptionist answered. I need to speak to a lawyer about property. Rights, I said. My voice was calm, even though I felt tense inside. 3 hours later, I was sitting across from Nathan Ellis, a sharp-looking man in his 50s who listened carefully as I told him everything. So let me get this straight, he said once I finished. You and your sister inherited a house from your grandmother. You let your parents live there rent-free. Now, after they asked you to give your apartment to your sister and publicly embarrassed you when you said no, you want to know what your options are with the house. Yes, I said. I'm not trying to be mean, but they've treated me badly and shown no respect. I need to understand my rights. Nathan looked over the will and nodded. It's pretty simple, he said. You and your sister each own 55% of the house. You can ask for the house to be sold at any time, and the money will be split equally between the two of you. What's the process? I asked. I'll write up a formal letter saying you want to sell your half of the house. Your sister can either buy your share at the fair market price, or the whole house will have to be sold and the money divided. Legally, your parents don't have any say. I took a deep breath. Go ahead, do it. For the next few days, I kept busy working on my apartment. I finished painting the living room and started pulling up the old carpet. The physical work helped take my mind off everything going on with my family. I blocked their numbers for a while. I needed some peace to think clearly without their constant messages and calls. 6 days after my meeting with Nathan, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. My parents, Janet and Brian, were standing in the hallway. I didn't open the door. Nicole, we know you're in there, my mom yelled. Open the door right now. We need to talk about that ridiculous letter, my dad shouted, his voice loud and angry. I stayed quiet and pressed record on the voice memo app on my phone. You ungrateful brat, my mom screamed. After everything we've done for you. You're trying to make your pregnant sister homeless, Janet cried. This is low, even for you, Brian said. I recorded every word, every insult, every angry threat they yelled through the door for nearly 20 minutes before they finally gave up and left. The next day, I sent the recording to Nathan. He called me right away. This is harassment, he said firmly. We can file for a restraining order if needed. But more importantly, their behavior actually helps your case. It shows they've been hostile toward you. A week later, Nathan called with an update. Your parents' lawyer reached out, he said. They want to try mediation. The meeting was set for the following Sunday at Nathan's office. I arrived early, wearing my best outfit, a navy blue pantsuit I usually saved for big meetings at work. Nathan greeted me with a confident smile. Remember, he said, you have every legal right to do this. Don't let them make you feel guilty. My parents, Janet and Brian, arrived with their lawyer. My mother gave me a hateful look as she walked past. Traitor, she whispered. This meeting began. The other lawyer spoke first, listing the facts of the case. He argued that selling the house would hurt my family and cause them stress. Nathan responded by sharing the recording of the threats at my door and the social media post my mom made. It was clear they had treated me badly. After nearly 3 hours of back and forth, the lawyers stepped out to talk in private. When they returned, they had a proposed agreement. The house would be sold and the money split evenly between Janet and me, just like the will said. My mother broke down in tears when she heard this. Please, Nicole, she cried, suddenly acting like the victim. We're your family. How can you do this to us? I'm sorry about the cake. I lost my temper. I looked at her tear-streaked face and thought about everything. All the times I forgave her. All the years I felt like second place to Janet. The public shaming, the screaming at my door, and the demand to give up the apartment I earned. The house will be sold, I said quietly. That's final. Nathan nodded and started writing up the settlement. As we sat there waiting, I could feel the anger coming from my family. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time, I was standing up for myself. 3 months passed in a blur of paperwork and meetings. The house sold faster than expected. The market was strong and it was in a good location. After closing costs and fees, Janet and I each got a little over $310,000. I didn't speak to my family at all during that time. Everything went through our lawyers. Nathan later told me my parents were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They had been living in a house they didn't own, and they had never paid for anything beyond basic upkeep. What are they going to do now? During our final meeting, I asked Nathan, so what's happening with them now? Your sister is using her share as a down payment on a new house, he said. Your parents will be moving in with her and Brian. They've gotten a mortgage. For the rest. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty, like I had pushed my parents out of their home. But another part, the part that remembered the cake in my face and the public embarrassment, felt like justice had been served. What about you? Nathan asked. Any plans for your share of the money? I've been working with a financial advisor, I said. I'm putting it into a mix of stocks, bonds, and real estate investments. Smart move, he said with a nod. Well, unless there's anything else, I think we're done here. I shook his hand. Thank you for everything. As I walked out of his office, I felt lighter, like I had finally let go of something heavy I'd been carrying for years. The pressure to always be the responsible one. The one who stayed quiet. The one who gave everything up. Back at my apartment, I looked around and took it all in. The renovation was nearly done. I had replaced the old carpet with hardwood floors, painted every room, updated the kitchen with new appliances, and added modern light fixtures. It didn't even look like the same place I'd bought 2 months ago. It truly felt like mine now, in every way. Then my phone rang. It was a friend from work. "Hey, Charlotte," I said as I answered. "Nicole, how are you?" she asked. I could hear the concern in her voice. She'd seen me at work with red eyes after the cake incident. "I'm okay," I said. And as I said it, I realized it was true. "The house is sold. The money's in my account." "And your family?" she asked. I sighed. That part's still a mess. I haven't spoken to any of them. I hear things from mutual friends. Like what? Janet got married last month. Small wedding, just close family. I paused. I wasn't invited, obviously. "I'm sorry, Nicole." "Don't be. I wouldn't have gone anyway." I said, and I meant it. "She's supposed to have the baby next week. It's a boy. And you're really okay with all of this? Not seeing your nephew?" I thought about it for a moment. He'll grow up hearing a story, that his Aunt Nicole wouldn't give up her apartment, that I made them sell their house, but they won't tell him how they treated me my whole life. Charlotte was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Families are complicated." "That's putting it mildly," I said with a short laugh, no humor in it. "The thing is, Charlotte, I don't think they ever really saw me as family. I was just someone they could use when they needed something." "Do you think you'll ever make peace with them?" she asked. "Not unless they admit what they did and truly apologize. I knew they would never change. My parents had favored Janet all their lives. They weren't going to suddenly realize it now in their 70s. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto my small balcony. The sun was setting, turning the sky shades of orange and pink. 7 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be cut off from my entire family, I would have been heartbroken. But now, I felt calm, at peace. My phone buzzed, a message from a mutual friend. Janet had the baby. 8 lbs 7 Oz. Everyone's doing fine. I stared at the message, waiting to feel something. Sadness, anger, regret. But I didn't. All I felt was a quiet acceptance. It felt like hearing about a stranger, not my own sister. I knew they were all living together now. Janet, Brian, the baby, and my parents. In the house they bought using Janet's half of the money and a mortgage that would take decades to pay off. I didn't feel bad for them. They'd made it clear how they saw me. Not as family, but as someone to use. Just a bank. I thought about the day my mother threw a cake in my face. That was the moment it all became clear. I went back inside. The apartment was quiet. Some people might call it lonely. I called it peaceful. I looked around. The walls I painted myself. The floors I installed with my own hands. Every part of this place was proof that I had built something for myself, that I had taken back my life. On my bookshelf sat a small box. Inside were the only family photos I kept. Pictures of me and my grandmother. She had always treated Janet and me the same. Maybe she had seen how things were and tried to make it right by giving us equal shares of her house. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, gently touching the box. As for the rest of my family, I didn't feel the need to reach out. It was there, turned to make the effort, and I knew they wouldn't. I was done sacrificing for people who would never do the same for me. I used to think family meant unconditional love and support. Now I know that real family, whether related by blood or not, would never ask you to hurt yourself just to make them feel better. Real family wouldn't throw cake at your face just because you said no. My phone stayed silent. No calls from my mother asking for forgiveness. No text from my dad admitting how he favored Janet. No message from Janet thanking me for always being there, always staying quiet, always letting her shine. And that was okay. I had my apartment, my savings, my career, and friends who truly cared. I had a life, one I built on my own, piece by piece, dollar by dollar.